NewsNation now monitoring those protesters in New York City up by Columbia University. We talked, throughout the broadcast today about this arrest of the Columbia grad student who faces the possibility of deportation. There was a news conference. We showed you a clip from that earlier. Protesters in the streets now in New York and on the march. We brought you one side of it earlier, the argument brought by Jim Zogby, basically saying that this guy was not given his due process and that this was this certainly was unfair. They don't know where he is. And, he was very, very upset about it. A different perspective from Congressman Tim Walberg, who joins us. Congressman Walberg is a Republican out of Michigan. He's the chairman of the House Education and Workforce Committee. So weigh in on this yourself. This is, another controversy surrounding anti-Semitism on college campuses. What do you make of the way this particular case has been handled?
Well, I tell you what, this type of anti-Semitism, anti-Americanism cannot go on our college campuses. That's not what we are. And I think it's time that universities and colleges and their leadership step up to the plate, allow certainly First Amendment liberties, freedom of speech, but when it impacts individuals' lives simply because they're a Jew, that's a different story. And I think they have to get control of it. The billions of dollars that go toward higher education from the taxpayers shouldn't be paying for these type of things continuing on campus, especially when we know there are universities and there are colleges that have stepped up to the plate and they have control. Students have not lost any freedoms, but they also have the opportunity to live freely.
I think a lot of people agree with everything you said, but in this particular, or most of what you said, but this particular case, do you know anything specific that this gentleman did that was anti-Semitic? Have you seen it?
Well, he led, as far as I know, this individual that we're talking about, led the significant demonstrations that took over campuses like Columbia and put Jewish students at risk because of what resulted from those demonstrations, the lack of ability to enjoy their classroom experience, to get to class in many cases, to be treated as second-class citizens in this great country. If you're involved in that, there ought to be some questions asked at the very least.
You think those protests cross the line between, the other side of it obviously is that free speech, especially on college campuses, is something that we've stood for a long time in this country. Where do you think the line was crossed?
Well, I think when it stops students from having the ability to attend class themselves with feeling at risk, being assaulted. Sadly, some of this came about as a result of radical professors. I've seen pictures of professors on Columbia campus with masks on themselves, with orange vests, linked arms to keep Jewish students from getting to places that all other students could go, including Palestinian students and Arab students. That's wrong. There ought to be free expression on campus, but never to the point that it's keeping people from having that educational experience that they paid for and should expect to receive on campus.
We'll continue to cover this story, which we have throughout from all sides, which we have, by the way, throughout as well. I want to ask you about the other big story of the day, Congressman, while you're on, and then to me, that's the economy. We had a big sell-off in the stock market, not just today, but in recent weeks. The president, with these threats and in some cases implementation of tariffs, and a comment in an interview where he didn't rule out the fact that there might be some pain, right? There may be at least some short-term pain for long-term gain. Let me put up a tweet that came from one of President Obama's old economic advisors, who I guess saw that interview with the president. It said the following: if you're implementing a credible plan that entails short-term pain for long-term gain, the stock market will go up, not go down. That's what Jason Furman says. What do you say?
Well, I say he's certainly entitled to his opinion. And I think the president as well. The president didn't lie to us during the campaign. He said that he was going to turn around America. 77 million people said, yes, we want him to do that. Everybody knew that to turn around this ship of state that's approaching $37 trillion in debt, with a bureaucracy that has taken over control of so many people's lives, that there would come at a point in time some discomfort. There would be some disruption. This may be the case, and so I encourage people, take a deep breath. Remember what took place during his first term. Remember the good economy.
Right.
Remember the tax cuts, thankfully, that we're still experiencing, and we need to get to that point of making them permanent.
Okay, one more question, Congressman. I don't often go back and forth on topics, but we got a piece of breaking news on the previous topic that you and I were discussing, so I'm just going to read that to you. It's from a federal judge that ruled, and perhaps get your reaction to it. But a judge has, in New York, just ruled and blocked any efforts by President Trump's administration to deport the grad student we were speaking about, Mahmoud Khalil, that the protests are, about there up at Columbia. So the president said people like this should be deported. The judge says any effort will be blocked. Your reaction?
Well, a judge can say what he or she wants to say. Ultimately, there's appeal process. And in the end, Article 2 powers, if they stay within the confines of the Constitution and law, ultimately will win. And so I guess we're going to have to wait and see if a judge, individual judge, will block the opportunity of a president to carry on what he was elected by 77 million people to do, to restore freedom, opportunity, and law and order to this country. And so it remains to be seen what will take place.
All right, Congressman Walberg, thanks for coming on tonight, sharing your views.